What actually happens inside a pigeon the moment it loses orientation? Because pigeons don't just get lost, something breaks first. Orientation is not magic. It is not a single instinct that suddenly switches off. It is a layered system, constantly recalibrating, constantly verifying. Magnetic alignment, solar positioning, visual landmarks, internal timing, memory, prediction, all of it working together quietly. So what happens when one layer begins to slip? What happens when the system no longer agrees with itself? That is where instability begins, and instability rarely announces itself loudly. When orientation fails, it is rarely sudden. It is progressive. The pigeon is still flying forward, still moving with the flock, still beating its wings with purpose. From the ground, nothing looks wrong, but inside, subtle corrections begin to multiply. One seasoned fancier once said, "A confident pigeon flies like it already sees home. A doubtful pigeon flies like it is negotiating with the sky." That doubt is not emotional. It is neurological. The bird's layered orientation system is recalculating more often than it should, and each recalculation demands energy. Under stable conditions, navigation runs almost automatically. Signals align, predictions feel reliable. The bird does not question its direction because every internal reference confirms it. But when small mismatches begin to stack, prediction turns into verification. Instead of trusting the first signal, the pigeon double-checks it. Instead of flowing forward, it samples again. Each recalculation consumes energy. Each comparison adds cognitive load, and the bird does not feel confused, it feels strained. Have you ever driven somewhere familiar and suddenly questioned a turn you normally take without thinking? That brief hesitation costs almost nothing for us. For a pigeon in flight, hundreds of meters above the ground, it costs far more. Micro-adjustments appear, slight arcs form in the air. The line is no longer perfectly straight. These arcs are not random, they are diagnostic. The brain is testing possibilities, asking silently, "Is this still correct?" Altitude may change. A pigeon that was flying at a steady height suddenly climbs. Why? Because higher elevation offers broader visual input, more landscape, a clearer solar angle, a wider confirmation field. It is an attempt to stabilize using fresh data. Speed fluctuates too. A confident racer maintains rhythm. An unstable one hesitates in bursts. It accelerates, then eases, then accelerates again. To spectators, it looks like normal variation. Inside the nervous system, processing demand is rising. Head movements sharpen, scanning becomes more frequent. The bird samples the horizon more aggressively, not because it has lost the desire to return home, but because its internal references no longer align perfectly. Magnetic cues suggest one vector, visual memory suggests another. The internal clock hesitates. The system is still functional, but it is no longer efficient, and efficiency is everything in long-distance flight. This is the compensation phase. One layer weakens, the others try to carry more weight. But compensation has limits. At what point does recalibration become overload? At what point does checking become doubting? The pigeon shifts from racing mode into something more demanding, decision mode. Racing mode is streamlined, direction feels confirmed, wing beats follow rhythm, energy is optimized for distance. The brain predicts what comes next and the body follows. Decision mode is different. Now every kilometer requires evaluation. The pigeon actively compares inputs instead of trusting them. It weighs magnetic alignment against solar position. It tests memory against terrain. None of them feel fully reliable, so the brain increases processing. Orientation failure is not confusion, it is overload. The pigeon is not panicking, it is overwhelmed by competing data. Each small mismatch forces another recalculation. Each recalculation burns glucose. The avian brain is small, but its metabolism is very high. As energy reserves drop, precision drops with them. Corrections become slightly delayed. Instead of preventing deviation, the bird reacts after it occurs. Reactive navigation costs more energy than proactive alignment. The cycle feeds itself. Attention fragments. The pigeon can no longer dedicate full focus to forward motion. It must divide resources between direction, altitude, muscle coordination, and internal regulation. Fatigue creeps in quietly. Wing rhythm loses efficiency. The flight that once felt smooth now feels effortful. The bird is still airborne, still determined, but the certainty is gone. And then comes a subtle shift. The pigeon is no longer projecting a clear route home. It narrows its focus to immediate stability, maintain altitude, maintain balance, avoid further error. Long-term direction becomes secondary. Circling increases, pauses lengthen. Sometimes the bird lands briefly, not simply from exhaustion, but to reset sensory input. On the ground, without the cognitive strain of forward motion, the nervous system attempts recalibration. This is the moment many fanciers never see. They only see the delay. They never witness the internal fracture that caused it. Coordination between orientation layers weakens further. Magnetic input no longer aligns with expectation. Solar confirmation feels ambiguous. Memory cannot fully validate the heading. The system stops agreeing with itself. And when agreement disappears, confidence collapses. We do hope that you are finding this information quite interesting. If you want to understand how top fanciers build birds that stay stable under pressure, make sure you follow this series. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us move on and beware, because what happens next might completely change how you see every race. Yet not every pigeon remains in this state. Why do some rebuild orientation while others drift further into instability? The answer lies in resilience under strain. Stronger birds retain at least one stable anchor. It might be a deeply encoded terrain map from prior training. It might be a robust magnetic reference. It might be an exceptionally accurate internal clock. That single reliable layer allows the brain to reorganize around it. Energy reserves matter just as much. A pigeon with efficient fuel management can afford extended recalibration. Glucose continues to supply the brain. Muscles respond precisely. Micro errors can be corrected before they compound. Gradually, partial confidence returns. Direction strengthens again. The bird transitions back toward racing mode. Training history also plays a quiet role. Birds exposed to varied release points develop flexible neural maps. Their hippocampus stores patterns, not rigid routes. When one expectation fails, they adapt rather than freeze. They experiment. They test. They rebuild orientation step by step. Stress tolerance influences the outcome as well. A calmer nervous system stabilizes faster. Hormonal spikes remain controlled. Cognitive processing remains clearer under uncertainty. In weaker systems, the story unfolds differently. Once overload begins, no anchor holds. Energy drops faster than recalibration can occur. Each attempted correction introduces new deviation. Stress amplifies error. Eventually, the pigeon shifts fully into conservation mode. It stops solving the navigation problem and prioritizes immediate survival. At that point, the race has effectively ended, even if the bird is still in the air. Two pigeons can be released at the same location under identical conditions. One rebuilds orientation after temporary instability. The other drifts into prolonged delay. The difference is invisible from the ground. It happens inside the layered system responding to strain. It happens in how quickly the brain recognizes mismatch. It happens in how efficiently it reallocates resources. It happens in whether overload spirals or stabilizes. So when we ask where pigeons go when they disappear, perhaps the deeper question is this: when did the internal system begin to fracture? Disappearance is rarely the beginning of the story. It is the final chapter of a progressive collapse. First comes hesitation, then compensation, then overload, then survival mode. The bottom line is, disappearance is the result. Disorientation is the cause. When orientation breaks, the race ends long before the pigeon lands. Remember, the sky does not defeat pigeons. Instability does. If you want to understand what happens next, where pigeons go when they disappear, watch our episode on that mystery. Where do racing pigeons go when they disappear? Because disappearance is not the beginning, it is the result. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.